We have 11th ranked Texas A&M 7-2 taking on 15 ranked Ole Miss, who also is 7-2. Texas A&M is a 2.5 point favorite in this game. This game is going to kick off 7 p.m. Eastern time this Saturday on ESPN. Last week, Texas A&M defeated Auburn 20-3. It was a really impressive victory. It was one of the best defensive performances that I have seen all year in college football, point blank, period. And Texas A&M's defense over the last couple of weeks has really hit their stride. Over the last 3 games, they have allowed less than 100 rushing yards in their last 3 games. They haven't given up over 100 rushing yards. They also have had 9 sacks and 7 forced turnovers during this 3-game stretch. So Texas A&M's defense right now has caught fire, and they're facing a wounded Ole Miss team right now. You look at Ole Miss, they defeated Liberty 27-14, but you gotta ask yourself the question, if you are a Rebels fan, just how healthy is Ole Miss going to be in this game? Because Ole Miss was a team that really started the season out really strong, but they kind of have struggled down the stretch. You know, they're kind of sputtering because they're kind of limping to the finish line. I believe that during their last week's game against Liberty, they were without 2 or 3 of their starting wide receivers. Matt Corral also has gotten banged up over the last couple of weeks, so you don't really know just how healthy this Ole Miss team is. And when you look at the injuries that Ole Miss has on offense, it goes further than just their wide receivers. The offensive line also is banged up as well, and you're going against a Texas A&M defense that is one of the best in college football right now. So for Lane Kiffin, you're probably scratching your head, trying to game plan, trying to figure out, okay, like, what are we going to have to be able to do to win this game? Because we know that Matt Corral is the heart and soul of this Ole Miss team. We know when he's playing well, the whole entire offense is playing well. Well, I don't really know if Matt Corral is 100% for this game. He probably isn't even 80% in this game. He may be 70%. And on top of that, we don't really know how his mobility is. We don't really know. And on top of that, he doesn't really have a good amount of talent around him right now due to injuries. So if they're going to win this game, Ole Miss that is, they're going to need Jerrion Ealy, their running back, to have a big game. Now, last week, he ran the ball 10 times for 115 rushing yards, had 2 touchdowns on the day. He's going to have a big game. And that's kind of weird to say, because when you think about Ole Miss, normally if they win a game, it's because Matt Corral had a phenomenal performance. But they're going to need running back Ealy to carry the load for this team, because I don't really feel like if Ole Miss is going to win this game, is going to be doing damage through the air. I think if they're going to win this game, it's going to be because they had a effective day running the football on Texas A&M, and that's easier said than done, because Texas A&M has one of the more athletic fronts in all of America. Their front 7 is really big, they're lengthy, they have speed, they have size, and also their secondary is really good also. So when you look at Texas A&M's defense, they're second in America in points per game allowed, only giving up 14.7 per game. They're 8th in yards per play, 26 in rushing yards per game allowed, and they have the 23rd best pass defense right now in college football. So this is an Ole Miss offense that right now you're going to have to heavily rely on the ground game, and Matt Corral may not be a part of that, because Matt Corral has had a big say in what Ole Miss does in the run game department this season, and we don't really know how effective he's going to be. So if Ole Miss is going to win this game, they're going to have to be able to do it through the ground. Now, defensively for Ole Miss, I don't really know if they're going to be able to stop the rushing game of Texas A&M led by running back Isaiah Spiller. Ole Miss on the defense side of football is giving up 205 rushing yards per game, which is one of the worst in America. So I think that if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're probably going to have to try to get Texas A&M in third and long situations. You're going to have to force Zach Calzada to beat you through the air. But if you're going to have that happen, you're going to have to be able to get pressure on Zach Calzada, because one thing about Zach Calzada is that this guy is really gritty, okay? But when he has pressure in the pocket and he doesn't have that much time to sit back in the pocket, he struggles. But when you give him all day to throw from inside the pocket, that's where he can do a lot of damage. And Texas A&M has more than enough talent on offense to do damage to an Ole Miss defense that hasn't really been good all this year. Now, they did a pretty good job against Liberty. They actually performed better defensively last week against Liberty than what I expected them to, because you see Malik Willis, who right now a lot of people believe is going to be one of the first quarterbacks taken in next year's 2022 NFL draft. You also got to remember that Hugh Freeze is one of the better offensive minds in college football. So I thought that Liberty was going to have a big day against Ole Miss defense last week, but that didn't happen, so you got to give them props for that. But what is Ole Miss going to look like defensively against a quality opponent? Now, we know that Texas A&M, they didn't really do that much offensively last week against Auburn. They pretty much did what they needed to do to win the football game. Their defense pretty much literally won them the game. But that was Auburn's defense, and Auburn's defense is a lot better than the defense that Ole Miss has had this season. So I don't really know if Texas A&M is going to have any struggles running the football on this Ole Miss front, because they haven't really been able to have success stopping the run all this year. And if you're Ole Miss, that's something that definitely has to be a focal point for you. And if you're a fan, that has to be a big concern, is how your defense is going to be able to handle the run, because if you can't stop the run, then Matt Corral isn't going to be on the field for that many plays, because they're going to be able to control time possession. They're going to be able to wear down your defense, and they're going to be able to keep your offense off the field. Another thing that's going to be really important is going to be, how are these two teams going to match up inside of the red zone? Because when you look at Ole Miss, this is a team that likes to go for it a lot on fourth down. Lane Kiffin is a pretty aggressive head coach, and he also is somebody who pays a lot of attention to the analytics. So depending on how this game is going, depending on the spot, where they are, depending on the side of the field they land on, that's going to be a factor in determining if they're going to go for it on fourth down or not. And if they do it in the red zone, if Texas A&M is able to come away with those fourth down stops, then those are pretty much going to be empty drives that Ole Miss ended up having no points on the board. So I think that the fourth down defense of Texas A&M is going to be really important for them winning this game. So you look back at that Auburn game, and at one point it was kind of like a stalemate. It was like 3-3 for a very long time. And then in the second half, that's when the defense of Texas A&M started to affect the outcome of the game. And it was the big reason why they won this game against Auburn. And it's going to be another reason why I picked them to win this week against Ole Miss. I'm going to take A&M to get the victory. The reason why I got to take A&M right now is because Ole Miss isn't healthy. You don't really know the status of your starting wide receivers going into this game. We don't really know how healthy Matt Corral is in this game, and even if Matt Corral does play, he's definitely not 100%, so we really don't know just how much of Matt Corral we're going to be able to see in this game. And I don't really know if Ole Miss, with the injuries that they also have on their offensive line, is going to be able to handle the demons that Texas A&M has on their front seven. So I got to take Texas A&M to win this game. I think this game could be similar to how the Auburn game went for Texas A&M last week, but I'm going to take Texas A&M to win 24-14. It's my final score prediction in this game.